it's Mary. I hope you've been well. It's been a little while since we last met and talked about family history research. And when we did, we talked about DNA testing. I touched briefly on DNA matches, and today I'd like to go into a little more detail on what you will find on your DNA matches, your DNA match list, and your results. So with your results for your DNA test, you get a list of matches. And these are your DNA relatives, or people with whom you share DNA. You'll have their account name, an estimate of the relationship, and the amount of DNA that you share. So the DNA that you share is represented as a number of centimorgans across an amount of DNA segments. So I'm not going to get into what centimorgans are exactly, but we'll define them and consider them as a measurement of probability. So the more centimorgans you share, the more DNA segments you have in common, and the more likely you are of sharing genetic traits. We're going to take a look at the information from some of my DNA match results. Before we do that, we should talk about DNA and inheritance. But first, let's define what an ancestor is. So an ancestor is someone from whom you've descended. So another way of talking about them is talking about your direct line going back. So your parents, your grandparents, your great-grandparents, your great-great-great-grandparents, and on and on and on back. DNA and inheritance can be counterintuitive at times. We can say with certainty that you received half of your DNA from your mother and half of your DNA from your father. But going back further, we don't know the exact percentages that you inherited from your grandparents. And as you go back further, there's a point where you did not inherit DNA of specific ancestors. So you can be related to some people through your family tree and not related through your DNA. So if you took a DNA test, you're going to test as not sharing DNA with these relatives, and you won't share DNA with their descendants. One of my close relatives was tested by the same testing company that did my test. So this relative has matches on her match list that I don't have. Am I related through my family tree with those people on her match list? Yes. I did not, however, inherit the same DNA from our ancestors that they inherited. Now, before you think that my relative and I aren't related in the way that we think we're related, we are. We're related, trust me, exactly as we thought we were related. But there's no way for us to have all the same DNA and therefore all the same matches on our match list. So even with your siblings, your shared DNA can be anywhere from 2,209 centimorgans to 3,384 centimorgans. So if you and your siblings are tested, you're going to share some matches. You'll have other matches that you don't share. Are you related through your family tree to all these people? Yes, you are. So I hope we have that straight. And now that we do, when you are tested or your relatives are tested, please don't use your DNA results or their DNA results to develop theories about if they're who they think they are or how they could be getting the results that they have. Test results can vary for the same level of relationship in your family tree. So now let's look at some of my results. So these are the results for some of my matches. And for privacy reasons, I've replicated the results here instead of showing you their information on the testing site. So I chose these matches because I know exactly how I'm related to them through my family tree. So I have here 2 matches where the testing company believes that we are second to third cousins. And the shared DNA for the first one is 398 centimorgans across 22 segments. And for the second one, whoops, I just bumped that. I hope you can still see that. It's 250 centimorgans across 10 segments. I've got what the testing company believes is a third to fourth cousin, and we share 165 centimorgans across 9 segments, and a fourth to sixth cousin, where we share 58 centimorgans across 6 segments. This is an interesting chart that I found at familysearch.org, and they got it from the geneticgenealogist.com. And it has a family tree basically laid out, and with that family tree, it labels what people on different levels of the family tree are, and how many the range of centimorgans that you can share with those people. So you are right here, your parents and your grandparents, and from your grandparents, if you go over, you got your grand uncles or grand aunts. From your parents, it has your uncle or aunt. And for you, it has your siblings, and then your uncle or aunt's child is your first cousin. From your great-grandparents, you have your grand uncle or grand aunt, and their child would be your first cousin once removed. And the whole cousin once removed thing is kind of confusing. So basically, a person who is removed from your family tree is on a different level of the family tree than you are. So here, the people on the same level are you, your siblings, your half-siblings, your first cousins, your second cousins, your third cousins. Your first cousin once removed would be the child of your first cousin, or the child of any grand uncles or grand aunts or great uncles or great aunts on the family tree. Someone who is twice removed is separated from you on the family tree by 2 levels. So your first cousin's grandchild would be your first cousin twice removed. And basically, that explains the family tree situation, hopefully. And if you notice, you've got siblings and their range of centimorgans that they might share with you, first cousins and range of centimorgans. So let's go back, look at my match list and the actual relationships that I have with those people on my match list. All right, so my relatives, my matches, that the testing company estimated were second to third cousins. The first one with the 398 centimorgans across 22 segments is a first cousin once removed. The estimated second to third cousin that shares 250 centimorgans across 10 segments is a first cousin twice removed. The third to fourth cousin that I shared 165 centimorgans across 9 segments is actually a second cousin, and the estimated fourth to sixth cousin that I shared 58 centimorgans across 6 segments is actually a third cousin. So there are people on my family tree who the company estimated as a certain relationship, and I'm actually closer in relationship than they estimated. And I think that is the case. That is the case in all of these. We talked about a lot of information here today. We got more deeply into what you can find on your match list and why some people that you are related to on your family tree might not show up as matches on your DNA match list. We defined ancestors and talked about the difference between ancestors and relatives. And we talked about shared DNA and defined centimorgans in a workable sense. I hope that this was informative and helped you understand a little more what you'll see in your DNA match list and to understand the results a little better. And I hope I answered some of the questions that you may have had. I want to thank you so much for joining me today, and I will be back again soon with some more family history information. Thank you so much.